Well, here with me now, Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano returns. So the government allowed, the Defense Department allowed Bergdahl to enter this plea without a trial. Is that a disservice to this country?
It's a great disservice to the country because the case begs for transparency. I'll just give you an example. Normally, in a criminal case like this, there is an investigator who will examine the defendant and decide whether or not he is worthy to be tried. The investigator is usually a lieutenant or a captain, and they spend about 2 or 3 hours with the person. In this case, Bergdahl was examined by a general, the highest-ranking person they could find that does this, who spent 3 days with Bergdahl, with lawyers and with psychiatrists, and concluded beyond a doubt he's mentally deranged, unable to participate in his defense, and ought not to be tried. What did the government do? Threw the report out and sent another investigator to spend 2 hours with Sergeant Bergdahl, who came down with the conclusion, yeah, he's okay to be tried. That's issue number one. So on what basis did they throw out this investigation by the general, supported by legal arguments and by psychiatrists, and accept another one? Number two, legal counsel for Sergeant Bergdahl threatened to call as witnesses Susan Rice and former President Barack Obama because they decided to exchange this low-level person for 5 high-ranking Taliban who are kept at Guantanamo Bay. They, after examining the case, called him an American hero. What was the basis for that? I'm telling you, Kennedy, the decision to accept the guilty plea was a deal with Barack Obama to keep him off the witness stand. I want to know, the public has the right to know what he knew and when he knew it, and why he called this person that Donald Trump has called a traitor, I think also not well-grounded, a person called him an American hero, and why he made this imbalanced exchange of 5 terrorist leaders for this one low-ranking person. We will never know the answers to these questions because the Defense Department accepted this guilty plea.
Well, it's interesting because the judge is going to allow into evidence during the sentencing hearing people who received serious wounds while they were looking for Bergdahl. What does that say to you?
Well, unfortunately, there are rules that permit this. It's known as prior bad acts. It happens in civilian cases as well. If a defendant pleads guilty...
We talked about this in terms of Harvey Weinstein last week.
Yes. Yes, if Harvey Weinstein pleads guilty to one of those charges against him, all the others will be articulated to the sentencing judge. Same thing with Bergdahl. He's already pleaded guilty. But everything that he's done wrong in his adult life, and anybody he's harmed, related to this or not, can be used against him at the time of sentencing. I think this rule is abominable. I refused to permit it in my own courtroom, and when I did, I was often reversed by the appellate courts. I still refuse to permit it. It's so profoundly unfair. But it's the law of the land.
Yeah, it sounds pretty broad. So what do you think is going to happen to Bergdahl? What do you think is sentencing?
Well, I disagree with him that he couldn't get a fair trial.
I disagree with that as well.
Yes.
Because I don't think every single person is influenced by the whims of a candidate during a presidential race.
Correct. The president made some statements that I will attribute to his wish to energize his base and not his attachment to the truth. He is not a traitor. He has not been charged with treason. It's an inappropriate thing to say to him. I do think he could have gotten a fair trial, and I would love for a fair jury to hear his version of events, and I'd love them to hear what Barack Obama did and why he did it. That apparently is not going to happen. I don't know what this judge will do. This case does not beg for life in prison. If it were up to me, I would sentence him to time served. He's already served time in an American prison. He served time in 5 years in a Taliban prison, which is something far beyond what would ever happen to him here. What the judge will do, I don't know. It'll probably be in the range of 10 to 15 years. A profound disservice to Bergdahl and to the American judicial system to permit a sentence of that length without the fact-finding and the transparency that comes from a jury trial.
No, I wish we could learn more about this case because there are so many unanswered questions.
Yes.
And I think if you are family members of those who were either hurt, grievously harmed, and no longer with us in the search for Bergdahl,
you want those answers as well.
Absolutely.
Right? Is this guy the monster that you have been led to believe he is, or is there something there that happened that the government doesn't want us to know about that you ought to know? That's what I would say to these grieving families.
All right, Judge, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.